Thank you for joining us here at SSC Live TV. Dr. Ken Jobst will be discussing how your dietary habits can assist you in your spiritual goals. Welcome to Taste and See.
Greetings and welcome to Taste and See. My name is Ken Jobst, and I'd like to welcome you here once again for a time of food and fellowship and faith. So we're going to be building some bridges between some Bible verses, and we're going to be also taking a look at how they impact us today and the food that we eat. You know, our scripture lesson for today is coming from the Gospel of Mark. Mark is like the oldest of the synoptic Gospels. So hear this story from the Gospel of Mark. This is the story of Jesus feeding the multitudes. And it's a great place to start, right, for Taste and See. Mark chapter 6, verse 30. It begins like this. Then the apostles gathered to Jesus and told him all things, both what they had done and what they had taught. And he said to them, "Come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while." For there were many comings and goings, and they did not even have time to eat. Well, I just want to say right there, that's a tragedy right there. If you don't have time to eat, you're too busy, right? Okay, the disciples and Jesus, they're in this situation. So they departed to a deserted place in a boat by themselves. But the multitudes saw them departing, and many knew him and ran there on foot from all the cities. They arrived before him. That is, okay, Jesus is out on the Sea of Galilee, and they're like rowing the boat, trying to get away from the crowd. The crowd's just walking around on the shore because they know, it's Jesus. They know he's going to Capernaum. They know the neighborhood. So they're going to, just walk around and get there before he does, which is what they do. They arrived before them and came together to him. And Jesus, when he came out, saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion for them because they were like sheep not having a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. I'm just going to pause right here. We're not done yet, but I want to pause right here to say, look at this connection. Jesus had compassion on them, so he taught them. Wow, you got to have the heart before you can instill the education. Jesus had compassion upon the multitudes, so he taught them, began to teach them many things. Well, when the day was now well spent, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and already, tick, tick, the hour is late. Send them away, that they may go to the surrounding country and villages and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat." But he answered and said to them, "You give them something to eat." What? Did you see what happened right there? There was a problem. The multitudes didn't have food to eat. Jesus took the multitude's problem and made it the disciples' problem. He said, "You give them something to eat." Now they said to him, Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give them something to eat? It's like 8 months' wages. There's 5,000 people here. Add the women and children, there's probably like 12,000 people. How are we supposed to, I got it like that. And how are we going to feed all these people? But he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." And when they found out, they said, 5. And 2 fish. I love that as well, because Jesus said, "How many loaves have you got?" And they're looking around, they look around, and hey, there's more than we thought was here. It's not just loaves. There's fish too. A couple of tilapia, and they are here. So Jesus said, right, go out, see what you got. Jesus was doing, watch this, asset-based community development. He was meeting a need in the community by starting out with the question, what do you got? Go see what you got. How many loaves do you have? And they said, we got 5 loaves, and beyond that 5 loaves, we've even got 2 fish. Wait, look, we got more than we thought we had. How many times do you sit down and realize you got more than you thought you had? God is good. Well, then he commanded them to make them all sit down. Now, I know the pronouns kind of wipe me out sometimes reading the Bible. He, that is Jesus, commanded them, which is the disciples, to have them, which is the multitudes, to sit down. He commanded them to tell them, right? So Jesus told the disciples to tell the multitudes to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in ranks, in hundreds and in 50s. And when he had taken, well, now watch, there's 4 words here that are incredibly important. When he had taken, so the first word is take, right? When he had taken the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven, blessed, and broke the loaves, and gave them to his disciples to set before them. And the 2 fish he divided among them all, so they all ate and were filled. They ate till they couldn't eat anymore. They ate until they arrived at satiation. They ate until they were satisfied. And then, right, then they took up 12 baskets full of fragments and of the fish. Now, those who had eaten the loaves were about 5,000 men. Wow. So this is the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000, or Jesus feeding the multitudes. It's a miracle that occurs in each of the synoptic gospels. There's only one other miracle that does that, and that's the resurrection. But I'd like for us to consider a couple of things before we move on to our feast today, right? Look at those 4 words that characterized what Jesus did with the resources that were brought to him. Take. Sometimes we have to have and nurture a spirit of receptivity. You know, God may be trying to give us things and we've got our hands full with something else, or we're just not even paying attention. But Jesus says the first step in this whole thing is receptivity. You have to be able to receive what God wants to give us. So take. But the second step then is to bless. God wants to give it to us, but we need to bless God for the giving. So we need to return a thanks. We need to recognize that, once again, every good and perfect gift is from above. So we take, we bless, and then there's this step, and this is the hard step. The hard step is to break. Because, you know, we've got to break into pieces some things in order to serve, right? We may have to break away from some old habits. We may need to break away from some old ways of thinking. Take, bless, break, and then give. Now, it's important to recognize here, this is Jesus' miracle, right? Jesus is doing this miracle of multiplying the loaves and the fishes. But he did the miracle through the disciples. Jesus could have just as easily, I don't know, snapped his fingers and ba-bing, all this food is here, right? But Jesus decided to involve and engage the disciples in what was going on. And in the fulfillment of this miracle, Jesus invites and then gives the disciples a service to do. He says, go out in an orderly fashion, have the people sit in 50s and be seated in hundreds over there in the grassy places, and then we'll serve them and make this thing happen. So the problem that Jesus started out with, well, let me say it this way. The problem that the disciples perceived, it's a deserted place, the hour is late, and people are hungry. Jesus took that perceived problem, took it from the multitudes and made it the disciples' problem, and then the disciples, owning the issue, Jesus comes right behind them and says, you know what? What have you got? I will work with what you have. Now, God is a good God. God is a God of abundance. Jesus said that I came to give them life and that they might have it more abundantly. How abundantly? Well, from 5 little pita breads, right? It's not like a Wonder Bread loaf we're talking about. They're like little pita breads. From 5 of those pita breads and a couple of fish that came out of the Sea of Galilee, Jesus feeds 10, 11, 12, maybe as many as 15,000 people. Now, God can do some amazing things, but God never does a miracle without a witness to it. Somebody that's going to be there and say, look, this is my testimony. Here's what I saw. Here's what happened. You make of it whatever you will, but I was there and God did this thing. God's a God of abundance. Even after feeding all these thousands of people, there were still leftovers. And that brings us to today's taste and see. Jesus was not content to leave the leftovers behind. He instructs the disciples and says, take those baskets, go out there, pick up what's left over. You never know what you're going to be able to do with what's left over. So we've got a situation of some leftover bread and leftover fish, gathers 12 baskets. By the way, these are not like little baskets. These are like laundry hampers that they picked up all the pieces and they've still got 12 baskets full of this stuff. Well, it's the gathering of the fragments that I want for us to appreciate today in today's Taste and See. Today what we're going to do, we're going to look out in the garden, we're going to graze through the produce section, and we're going to see what there is by way of a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we're going to put it together into Gazpacho. Now, what's Gazpacho? Stay with me, don't leave just yet. Gazpacho is a soup. And it's a very interesting soup. Now, some purists would say that, well, gazpacho has to come from the Andalusian region of Spain, right? That it's a traditional dish there, and it's something that involves some beef broth, and it involves some leftover bread, bread that's gone maybe a little bit stale. You don't want to use it for a sandwich, but you want to use it in this soup that's gazpacho. There's a kind of a Mexican-Americanized twist on gazpacho that does not so much rely on bread, right? But it's more a tomato-based soup, and a little bit of everything goes into it. And there's something special about this soup. I'm going to just go ahead and tell you right now. It's a cold soup. It's designed to be eaten chilled. And so when it's hot outside, when it's the middle of summer, when the heat is starting to get to you, it's a nice thing to make a lunch out of some gazpacho. So we're going to get busy and we're going to start doing this gazpacho right now. And I've got to let you know that the primary ingredient in the gazpacho that I'm going to share with you today is just good old tomato juice, right? However, you can do something a little bit different, and what I've done is to get the low sodium variety of a multiple vegetable juice, right? Something like V8 or something like that. But what you want is all of those different vegetables, and what we're going to do is that we're just going to go ahead and put some of that in the pot, and I'm looking, look at that, I think I've got about a quart. Oh, there it is, that's the quart. So we've got a quart of tomato juice. or this multiple vegetable juice. Into that, we want to include just a variety of things that we're going to find in the garden. You know what? Tomatoes. Tomatoes are going to go into it, so we're going to take a couple of tomatoes. These are Roma tomatoes. I love the Roma tomatoes because they keep solids so well. They're a meaty tomato. A lot of tomatoes that you get out of the garden, they're going to be mostly juice. Let me say a word just now. If you're the kind of person that wants to go out and do this like the old-fashioned way, then go out in the garden and get those big, juicy tomatoes. And what you want to do is boil some water. And as you boil the water in a pot, maybe like a 6-quart pot, boil that water and then dip the tomatoes in it for just a minute. Not even a minute, 30 seconds. Dip them in there for 30 seconds and then scoop them out with a ladle, a slotted ladle. We're going to have a good time talking about kitchen utensils one day. But with your slotted ladle, pick it back up after 30 seconds, and then the tomato skin will slip right off. And then what you want to do is seed the tomato, which involves a couple more steps involving centrifugal force. I don't know how it all works, but you get the seeds out of the tomato, and there's little machines that you can buy online that do that for you. Well, I'm in the midst of chopping this Roma tomato. I've got it nice and chopped up. My wife, Elisa, likes to chop everything up like teeny fine. And I like to leave it so you know what it was before it went in the pot. So right here, I got my Roma tomato, and I'm going to put that in. Oh, yeah, look at that. Oh, boom. Right there, it's going in. I've got tomato. And the next thing that I want to put in is about half an onion. So I'm just going to cut this onion from the North Pole to the South Pole. I've already peeled it, as it were. I know there's so many different ways to cut an onion. But watch, I'm just going to do this kind of old-fashioned. We're going to make little crescents. And once again, this is largely to taste. I've got one sweet onion that's right here. One sweet onion. It may be a Vidalia. That's a sweet onion. It might be a Maui onion. Those are hard to come by around here. But you want a sweet onion because when this is chilled and the flavors start to mingle, that's what it's all about. So we're chopping our sweet onion. Some folks call them a yellow onion, or some are marketed as sweet Vidalias, or a couple different species of onion. So the onion goes in. There's my onion. Oh, it's starting to look good. It's starting to look the way I want it. Now, a little more onion piece and a bell pepper. And by the way, bell peppers come in 3-lobe or 4-lobe, green peppers. And I know there's somebody watching that can tell me the difference. Somebody once told me that, that's the gender of the plant. I'm like, what? Could be anything. Could be random for all I know. But I'm taking my green pepper, I'm cutting out the seeds, being a little liberal, cutting out that white layer there. Is that the asparagus? I guess that's in an orange. So once again, I julienne before I chop. So I'm cutting this reasonably fine in the long longitudinal North Pole to South Pole direction. Or is that latitudinal? Anyway, so I'm chopping my beautiful green pepper. A green pepper is a pepper without much capsaicin. So it doesn't need to be a spicy pepper. It actually needs to be a pepper that's going to be a soothing kind of taste and something that you're going to be delighted to run into as you're eating this beautiful gazpacho. So I've got these, and I'm chopping them in about 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch pieces. And once again, bring those together. And oh, look at that. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're moving right along. And we come to cucumber. I know there's cucumber folk out there that are purists one way or another. They're saying, gee, when you take the peel off the cucumber, you're losing all the vitamins. vegetable peeler, vitamin stealer is what they always told me. But, some folk just don't care for the skin of the cucumber. So we're removing what to look like. We're removing like 90% of the skin of the cucumber. All those vitamins, breaks my heart, but it's a part of it. Now, I'm just going to cut this much, and that looks like a nice little section of maybe 4 inches worth of the cucumber. I have it, and then once again, I'm going through and I'm going to chunk this cucumber in a little bit larger pieces because the cucumber has a cooling effect on it. Well, Pastor Ken, you say, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot in there that's spicy just yet. Why are you worried about a cooling effect as we put the cucumbers in? Well, remember, this has got to chill for a little while in the refrigerator, but we do have another ingredient that's coming before long that the cucumber might come in handy for. And so we're coming along with the second half of my 4-inch cucumber diced and sliced, coming along very nicely. And so we gather the fragments because that's what Jesus told us to do. Jesus said, gather the fragments of what's left. So those fragments go in just like that right there. We've got our onion in, we've got tomatoes in. We have our cucumber in as well. And let's see here, how are we doing? It looks like, oh, wait a minute. Cilantro. We've got to put a little bit of cilantro in. Now, there's 2 different schools of thought on cilantro. There's 2 types of people. There are those that love cilantro and cilantro is just fine. And there are those for whom genetically cilantro tastes like soap. Well, as it turns out, I'm one of those that cilantro tastes like soap. So I'm not going to put a whole lot in it, but I do have to say that as I chop the cilantro in reasonably large pieces and bring that over to my pot, it just adds a particular, adds a nice little green in my Le Creuset pot that was made to go on the stove, but it's going to be going right into the refrigerator. But first, before we do that, we've got to give this a little bit of life, right? And I do that by a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, right? So the Worcestershire sauce is going to go into the tune of, once again, this is to taste, but I like about a teaspoon. So right there is a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. Just a touch. Now look, you know and I know that tomatoes make this pretty acidic to begin with. But we just need a little bit, just a teaspoonful of apple cider vinegar, and that's going to help give it a little bit more. That's going to brighten up the flavor. Trust me, right? And I do that because we started out with low sodium tomato sauce. A little olive oil gives it a bit of body. Now, once again, just a 1/4 teaspoon. But now we're coming in with the hot sauce. And once again, doing this to taste, I love the hot sauce. So we're going to give those cucumbers something to worry about in there. So that's about, I put 3 tablespoons of hot sauce right in there. Now, once again, just before this goes into the refrigerator, I'm going to take a little bit of our world-famous cotija cheese, and it's a salty cheese. We're getting salt from so many different places. So the salty cheese goes as a garnish right on top, something like that. Oh, wait a minute, I want a little bit more. So there's our cotija cheese. And finally, to round this off, we're going to put the juice of 1/2 lime. And I love limes. Lime is a flavor that I've not appreciated until very recently. But by the way, just to get the juices flowing in the lime, I always like to roll it just a little bit. Having rolled the lime now once again around the equator, we cut it. And just to keep everything lively, with citrus I like to make a few little perforations in the citrus before we squeeze the juice of half a lime, into our gazpacho. Now, there, let's see here. I got boom, 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 and once again, salt and pepper to taste. And I'm just going to go really lightly with the salt, but it helps. And I love these Telecherry black peppercorns with the grinder, because as you're grinding the pepper, then it releases all of the aromatics in the pepper. So if you're buying ground pepper that's like, you blow it, makes you sneeze, try the pepper berries, the little pepper kernels, peppercorns, and grind them at the moment that you're serving, and just put it right on top there, like that. There are salt, pepper, Worcestershire, we've got our vinegar and hot sauce, we've got the olive oil, all of the other ingredients, and I'm just going to put the top on my little Le Creuset, and then it goes into the refrigerator. I encourage you to chill it for about 2 hours, or if you've got a good refrigerator, go ahead, chill it for an hour, and then take it out of the refrigerator to enjoy. And it will be a delight on a hot summer day. Brought my ladle, and I just have to give this, ooh, yeah. Let me do this. All right. You know what? If you had a little crusty kind of bread of some sort, let me do a little bit more cilantro just to garnish. And you've got a little bit of bread, you've got a little bit more of that Cajillo cheese, and it all comes together. And it is a wonderful summer dish that you have collected the fragments. And having collected the fragments, then it's cool, it's a delight. And look at that, you can make it in 10 minutes and you're good to go. Well, that's what we have for Taste and See this week. It has been a delight to be with you. Once again, as you're making the gazpacho, just remember, bring in the fragments. Jesus said, gather together the fragments. You've got zucchini in the garden, go ahead and put that in. You've got some other vegetables, okra works in here just fine. Go ahead and put that in your gazpacho. A little cheese on top, a little garnish, and it'll be a wonderful, wonderful blessing for you. Well, it's been a delight. We encourage you to continue, keep watching. If you have questions, let me know, and there's some exciting recipes coming up. Once again, this is Ken Jobst for Taste and See. God bless you, and bon appetit.
Thank you for joining us here at SSC Live TV. Dr. Ken Jobst will be discussing how your dietary habits can assist you in your spiritual goals. Welcome to Taste and See.